Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're back with our last season preview video of the 2025 offseason. In today's video, we're looking at the Kings and the Ducks, the last two teams to look at in the season preview series, how they're doing the offseason, and how they're shaping up going into 25-26. So look at these two franchises coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to the video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, our last season preview video of the 2025 offseason, as we have done before. We'll start looking at the team's 2024-2025 stats, see how they did, look at their additions and subtractions, the big trades that they made, look at their top 3 draft picks in the 2025 draft. We'll also look back at my offseason preview and see what of the 5 things I said they should do in the offseason preview they wound up accomplishing. We'll also look at my projected point total and my projected lineup for the 25-26 season for these two teams, and we'll also look at my offseason grade. So we're going to start with the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings last year had a pretty gosh dang good regular season, finishing with a record of 48-25-9, 405 points, 2nd in the Pacific Division, 4th in the Western Conference, and 6th in the entire NHL. They were very close to being a top 5 team this year in the regular season in the NHL. So the Kings had a fantastic season, one of the best they've had in recent memory. On home ice, they were a force to be reckoned with too, like one of the best home records you'll ever see. So the Kings had a really solid season, scored 249 goals for, but 203 goals against. So they were a mediocre in the middle of the pack offensive team, but they were stellar defensively, almost keeping their opponents to under 200 goals against for the entire season. Like, that is impressive. So very good stuff there, and a plus 46 is nothing to scoff at for the Los Angeles Kings. Goal scoring and point scoring wise in the regular season, Kempe led the team with 73 points, followed by Kopitar, who had 67, and Fiala, who had 60. While Kempe and Fiala were tied for a team lead in goals with 35, followed by Warren Foegele, who had 24. So you can say they were maybe somewhat of a middling team in the goal scoring side. Only Kempe and Fiala hit 30 plus goals, and only Kopitar, Fiala, and Kempe had 60 plus points. So you can see why they weren't one of the best offensive teams, but once again, we've seen worse than that, so not bad stuff there from Los Angeles. They went to the playoffs as the 2nd team in the Pacific Division, where they would wind up, after winning the first 2 games, losing to the Edmonton Oilers in 6. So once again, another first round exit at the hands of the Edmonton Oilers this year in round 1. So bad stuff there for Los Angeles. Playoff wise, point and goal scoring leaders, Kempe led the team with 10 points, followed by Kopitar, who had 9. Kempe led the team with 4 goals, followed by Byfield, Kuzmenko, and Fiala, who all had 3 goals. So obviously Kempe was once again the driving force in the postseason, and they actually had quite a bit of goal scoring in the postseason. They just weren't able to finish off the Edmonton Oilers. So very interesting note there. Next, if you go over to the offseason additions and subtractions, they added Yoel Armia from Montreal, Corey Perry from Edmonton, Cole Guttman from Chicago, Cody Ceci from Dallas, Brian Dumoulin from New Jersey, Samuel Bolduc from NYI, Anton Forsberg from Ottawa, and then in a trade, 2025 third rounder from Nashville and 2026 6th rounder from Colorado. Well, for the losses, they lost Trevor Lewis to UFA status, Kreider and Jeannot to Boston, Samuel Fagemo to Winnipeg, Vladislav Gavrikov to the Rangers, Caleb Jones to Pittsburgh, all in free agency, lost Jordan Spence in a trade to Ottawa, and lost David Rittich to the New York Islanders. So very interesting note there. So if you look at their additions and subtractions, they lose David Rittich. They were able to keep Phoenix Copley as the 3rd stringer, but they did add a better backup in Anton Forsberg. So I really do like the Forsberg addition, even though I don't think he's the best of backups. I think he's definitely an upgrade on David Rittich, so I'd definitely like that move there from the Kings. They lost Gavrikov, Jones, and Spence on the defensive end this offseason, and they added Ceci, Dumoulin, and Bolduc. So very interesting. Like, Bolduc's going to be an AHL level guy who could be a call-up option. Ceci and Dumoulin are decent defensive-minded defensemen, but they are getting up there in age. So I think Ceci will probably play 2nd pair minutes, Dumoulin 3rd pair minutes. They lose Gavrikov, who was a fantastic defensive-minded top 4 defenseman last year, so I definitely think that loss outweighs any of their additions. They also lose Caleb Jones and Jordan Spence. Spence played mostly on the 3rd pair, did all right, and Jones was a call-up option. So, I mean, they didn't do overly bad trying to replace what they lost, but I think the loss of Gavrikov outweighs anything else. And then they also lost Samuel Fagemo, who was a call-up option, Lewis, who was an older 4th-line forward, and Kreider and Granlund, who was a decent bottom 6 guy last year. And they add Armia, Perry, and Gutman. Gutman's going to be a call-up option, but Armia and Perry can easily be fourth-line forwards. Perry showed in the playoffs he can be a beast to be reckoned with, even on a lower line, while Armia is going to be a really solid penalty kill type guy for the Kings. So all in all, I definitely think their forward group got a little bit better with their additions. So all in all, like I said, the loss of Gavrikov really overshadows all the other things that the Kings did, but they definitely made some pretty good additions in this offseason. They also made one trade this offseason, trading away Jordan Spence to Ottawa for a 25 third and 26 sixth round pick. So it was a very puzzling trade, in my opinion, for the Kings to move off of a solid young defenseman like Jordan Spence, but it's an interesting one that got them a little bit of draft capital, so very interesting note there. Next, going over to their top 3 draft picks from the 2025 draft. So they had their first pick in the 2025 draft was the first rounder, 31st overall, and they took right shot defenseman Bruskevich. They took a second round pick, which was their second pick of the draft, 59th overall, and they took left winger Sihar. And the third pick of the 2025 draft was in the 3rd round, and the 88th overall they took left winger Epperson. So not too bad additions there for the Kings. They add a couple of left wingers and right shot defensemen in the draft with their first 3 draft picks. They had a pick in the 1st, the 2nd, and 3rd round. So it's not like they didn't have any draft picks. They'd have a couple of them, and I think they probably will hit home. I think Sihar and Epperson eventually could challenge for like bottom 6, middle 6 roles in Los Angeles, and Bruskevich I think eventually could be a really solid top 4 right shot defenseman in a couple of years' time. So some really interesting adds there in the 2025 draft from the Los Angeles Kings. And next, going over to my offseason preview checklist. So back in my offseason preview video, I said 5 things this Kings team should do in the offseason to improve and get better for its upcoming season. The first thing I said this team should do was to add a solid top 6 forward. They didn't do that. Their biggest additions were Corey Perry and Noel Armia, and as much as Perry has been a decent player throughout his entire career, I don't think at this point in time he's a top 6 forward. Armia is definitely not. So because they didn't really add a top 6 forward like I wanted them to, that's an X on the checklist. The second thing I said this team should do was to either keep Gavrikov or add a top 4 defenseman. And I guess you could say to some extent they may have done that. Really is depending on your view of guys like Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin. They lost Gavrikov, so they didn't wind up keeping him. So that part of the priority was not going to happen. But they did add Ceci and Dumoulin. Like one of those two is probably going to play top 4 minutes. Is that the best of top 4 additions? Does it really replace Gavrikov? I don't think so. But I think some people could definitely say that they would replace Gavrikov with a top 4 defenseman in Ceci. So I guess to some extent you could say they accomplished that. The third thing I said was to decide if Portillo or another goaltender would be the backup. After it sounded like Riddick was going to leave, Riddick did leave, but Portillo will probably not be a backup after they signed Anton Forsberg, which once again I don't think it's the worst goaltending backup in the world. I just think there are better options, but I definitely think he's going to be a better backup than Riddick was last year. So once again it's a check mark because he did add a backup goaltender. The fourth thing this team should do was to extend Kempe. At this current point in time, they're still having contract dialogue, but it hasn't been extended yet. Just like a lot of these big pending UFAs, no contract is currently in place. So at this current point in time, that's an X on the checklist. And the fifth thing it says team should do is to consider moving some of their top prospects for immediate help. Like they had a lot of prospects. I don't think I count Spence as a prospect anymore, so I'm not going to say that. So I'm never going to give that an X because the only trade they made was the Jordan Spence one, and they still have a whole bunch of their young prospects on their current roster, or at least signed their system. So very interesting note there. But that was my offseason preview checklist. And while they did do a couple of things, they didn't do a whole bunch of them, including extending Adrian Kempe or adding a top 6 forward. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to my projected lineup for the Los Angeles Kings for the 25-26 season. So at this current point in time, my projected lineup for the Los Angeles Kings is as follows. My top unit would be Kuzmenko, Kopitar, and Kempe. My second unit would be Fiala with Byfield and LaFerriere. Third unit would be Fogle with Danoa Moore. And fourth unit would be Armia with Hellenius and Perry. The first D pair would be Anderson with Doughty. Second would be Edmondson with Clark. And third would be Dumoulin with Ceci. Kemper would be a starter. Forsberg would be a backup. And Turcotte, Thomas, and Mover will be the 3 spares. And that would be a decent roster. Like forward-wise, after the Perry and Armia additions, they are deep. Defensive-wise, not the greatest in the world. I don't think they got a whole bunch worse because they added Ceci and Dumoulin, even though they lost Gavrikov, but still not the greatest defensive core in the world. And I think their goaltending time's a little bit better with Forsberg as the backup than Riddick. So very interesting note there. And next, going over to my current predictions for the Los Angeles Kings for a 25-26 season. So at this current point in time, I definitely think the Kings are going to have another solid season. I don't think they're going to have as good of a season as they did last year. I'm expecting a little bit of a step back, especially with the Gavrikov loss, but not a whole bunch. I currently have them projected to finish with a record of 45-29-8 for 98 points. Good enough for third in the Pacific Division. So I think they're going to flip-flop with Edmonton again. Going to be third in the Pacific again. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a couple of teams like a Ducks or a Canucks. Quite surprising runs in the regular season if they maybe kick the Kings down to like a wild card spot. But I think at this point in time, the Kings did just enough enough this offseason to keep it in a top 3 spot in the Pacific Division. So that's my current predictions for the Kings. Even though they're not going to be second in the Pacific Division, again, I still see them as a top 3 team, just under the triple-digit mark. So very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to my offseason grade for the LA Kings. It was a solid offseason from them. Like, they made a couple of really solid moves. I like the Army edition, as much as the bonus is not overly good. I like the Perry edition, as much as the term's really long and the AAV is not overly great. I do like Perry and Dumoulin, at least for the next year or two, being solid defensive-minded defensemen, helping the LA Kings shut down some of the other top-end talent on other teams. So I like all the stuff that they made. I want to give them a B- rating. I think they had a pretty solid offseason, not as good of an offseason as I think they could have had, but I think a B- is sort of warranted for the offseason that this LA Kings team just had. So very interesting note there. And lastly here, going over to the Anaheim Ducks. So going over to the Anaheim Ducks, they had a better season than I think a lot of people were expecting. Once again, it was nowhere close to being a playoff team. There were 16 points out of the playoff spots, but it was a lot closer to the 500 mark than they had been in years past. They had a 35, 37, and 10 record for 80 points, 6th in the Pacific Division, 12th in the West, and 25th in the entire NHL. So once again, a bottom-dwelling team in the NHL, but not as badly as they have been in the past couple of years. And once again, 80 points, given what they've done over the past couple seasons, is not half bad. They had 217 goals for and 261 goals against in the regular season. Once again, all overly great stuff there. Goals for-wise, they were one of the worst teams in the entire NHL. Goals against-wise was just a little bit below average. Could have been better, but could have definitely been worse as well. So I don't think they were overly bad goals against-wise, but goal scoring-wise left a lot to be desired of. So very interesting note there. And this team was a minus 44, which is not going to get you into very many playoff games. Goal and point scoring leaders in the regular season. Terry led the team with 55 points, followed by McTavish with 52, and Vetrano with 45. McTavish led the team with 22 goals, followed by Vetrano and Terry, who both had 21. So you can see where this team was atrocious goal scoring wise. No one hit the 60-point plateau. Only 2 players hit the 50-point plateau, and no one even hit the 25 goal mark. So you can see why this Ducks team was definitely one of the worst teams goal scoring wise in the entire NHL. So very interesting note there. And they missed the playoffs, so there's no playoff stats here to go off of for the Anaheim Ducks. Next, going over to their offseason additions and subtractions. So for their additions here, they add Mikael Granlund from Dallas. They add Chris Kreider from the Rangers in a trade, Ryan Poehling from Philly in a trade, Pierre Mrazek from Detroit in a trade, as well as a 2025 second, Columbus's 2025 fourth, their own 2026 fourth, Detroit's 2026 fourth, Philadelphia's, and 2027 second, Detroit. So they add a lot of draft capital. They lose Robbie Fabry to Pittsburgh on a PTO, Trevor Zegras in a trade to Philadelphia, Isaac Lundestrom to Columbus, Brett Liaison to Minnesota in a PTO, Carey Terrence to the Rangers in a trade, Brock McGinn and Justin Bailey to UFA status, Oliver Shillington to Carolina on a PTO, John Gibson in a trade to Detroit, and a 2025 third rounder Toronto. So all in all, some very interesting stuff there. They do trade away John Gibson, which is going to be a really bad blow. Like, Gibson over the past couple of years has been the really solid starter for the Anaheim Ducks, but they have no style. They add Mrazek in the trade, so Mrazek I think could be a really solid backup. They still have Ville Husso, who can be a solid third stringer. So all in all, even though they do lose Gibson, I don't think they're too much worse off at this point in time. They lose Oliver Shillington, who last year spent some time at the NHL level with the Anaheim Ducks. He was still injury prone last year, so they walk away from him, not too surprising there. Offensively, they lose Bailey, Terrence, who are both AHL level guys, Fabry, McGinn, who were injured but also gone to some NHL action, as well as Liaison, Lundestrom, and Zegras, who were all really consistent NHLers last year. And they add Ryan Poehling, Chris Kreider, and Mikael Granlund. I know the loss of Zegras especially hurts this Anaheim Ducks team, and you don't want to lose a whole bunch of depth with guys like Lundestrom, Liaison, Fabry, and McGinn. But I think all in all, the Ducks team definitely improved on the forward group. Granlund is a solid middle six center. Kreider is a solid top six goal scorer. Poehling can be a solid third, fourth line center slash winger, can help be a shutdown type guy. So all in all, I don't think they had a bad off season. And I think the forward group, even though they lost a little bit of depth, got a little bit better. And once again, they added a ton of draft capital in the trades that they did make this off season. So very interesting out there, but some very interesting trades from the Anaheim Ducks. This Ducks team made 3 trades this past off season. They acquired Chris Kreider and their own 2025 fourth round pick back from the New York Rangers in exchange exchange for Carey Terrence and the Maple Leafs 2025 third-round pick. They traded John Gibson to Detroit for Peter Mrazek, a 2026 fourth and 2027 second-round pick, both Detroit's. And they acquired Ryan Poehling as well as a 2025 second-rounder from Columbus and 2026 fourth-rounder from Philadelphia from the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Trevor Zegras. So some very interesting trades this offseason from the Anaheim Ducks, including moving Zegras and Gibson. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to our top 3 draft picks from the 2025 draft. So their top pick was 10th overall in the first round, and they took center prospect Roger McQueen. Then in the second round, they had 2 picks, one 45th overall, one 60th overall. At 45, they took center prospect Nilsson, and at 60th overall, they took left shot defenseman Boyles. So I mean, McQueen was a really solid pickup. I think long term he has the potential to be a solid second top line center, maybe a guy who can eventually play on the wing. He's a very versatile guy. I really like that addition there for the Ducks. I think Nilsson eventually could challenge for like a second, third line center role for the Ducks, and Boyles I think eventually could be like a solid third, maybe second pair defenseman in the Anaheim Ducks organization. So they had a couple of picks in the first and second round, and I think they definitely hit home on a lot of them, especially that first rounder one, getting Roger McQueen. So some very interesting draft picks in the 2025 draft from the Anaheim Ducks. Next, going over to the 5 things to send the offseason preview video this team should do in the offseason to improve and get better for its upcoming season. The first thing this team should do is to sign extensions for Mason McTavish, Sam Colangelo, and Lucas Dostal. All guys were RFAs. Colangelo started to show late in the last season that he could be a really solid goal scorer at the NHL level. McTavish was already established top 6 forward, and after moving John Gibson, Dostal is now the future net and the clear-cut starter going forward. And they were able to extend all of them. McTavish recently just signed a 6-year extension, I think it was, or a 5-year extension to remain in the Anaheim Ducks organization. Dostal signed a long-term extension, and Colangelo signed, I think it was a shorter-term deal, but he's going to be signed for the next couple of seasons in the Anaheim Ducks organization. So all 3 guys wound up being extended, which is great news there from the Anaheim Ducks, and to check off my checklist. The second thing that this team should do was to move John Gibson. That sort of situation was sort of bogging down the entire team, so I said they should move on from him, give him a fresh start, and try and move on from that situation, and they did. They moved him to Detroit. So as much as I do think they did all right on that deal, I think they could have done a little bit better, but still, like, Gibson's now no longer there. They don't have that distraction holding them down anymore. They now have Dostal as a clear-cut future, so they were able to move him. That's a check off my checklist. The third thing I said this team should do is to find out what to do with Trevor Zegras. If they're going to stay, maybe try and sign him to an extension, or if they didn't want to keep him anymore, try and trade him. They did trade him. They traded him to the Philadelphia Flyers so he could go play with his buddy Jamie Drysdale. So I like that move there from the Ducks. I don't think they got the greatest of returns, but it was a decent return, and they even got Poehling, who can help them this upcoming season. But they did wind up figuring out their situation with the Trevor Zegras stuff, so that's another check. The fourth thing that this team should do is to bring in a veteran top 4 defenseman to sort of add another veteran presence on that blue line. The only veterans this team has at this current point in time is Trouba and Gudas, both of which are entering the final year of their deals, could be dealt at this year's trade deadline if the Ducks aren't doing overly good, and they wound up not adding anyone. So that's a big X off my checklist because they didn't add a veteran like I was hoping them on the blue line. And the fifth thing it says team should do is to add 1 to 2 top 6 forwards. They completed that too. Granlund and Kreider, in my opinion, at this current point in time, are both top 6 forwards. Granlund can be a solid like second, third line, middle 6 type winger forward. He's a very versatile guy, and Kreider's going to be a really solid top 6 goal scorer playing with some of these younger Anaheim Ducks players. So they definitely add 2 top 6 forwards in my opinion. So that's another check off my checklist. So the Ducks definitely did a lot of things that were on my priority list in the offseason preview video. The only thing they really didn't was bring in a top 4 veteran defenseman, so very interesting note there. Next, going over to my projected lineup for the Anaheim Ducks for 25-26 season. So at this current point in time, my projected lineup for the Anaheim Ducks is as follows. On the top line, I have Kreider with Carlson and Terry. On the second line, I have Gauthier with McTavish and Killorn. The third line is Vetrano with Granlund and Colangelo. And the fourth line is Poehling with Strome and Johnston. I have Lacombe and Trouba being top pair. I have Mitnikov Gudas being second pair, and Zellweger Hellison being the third pair. Dostal the starter, Mrazek the backup, and Nestorenko, Lunio, and Husso being the 3 spares. And that'll be a decent roster. Like, they gotta have one of the best 1-2-3 punches down the goal goaltending side with still Mrazek and Husso. It's a really young blue line, but it's a really solid blue line. And with the veterans they added on the forward group, they got to have one of the like top 10 best forward groups in the entire NHL. So all in all, the Ducks definitely look like a really solid team on paper, at least on their lineup. Next, going over to my projected point total for the Anaheim Ducks for 25-26 season. That's current point in time. I am making a bold prediction here, and you'll probably see this in my bold prediction video coming up in the next couple of days. I have the Anaheim Ducks making the playoffs. Yes, I do. I have the Ducks finishing with a record of 42, 30, and 10 for 94 points, ever so slightly edging out a couple of very interesting teams for the second wildcard spot in the Western Conference. I don't think they're going to be doing it by much, but I think they're going to be able to improve by like 10, 15 points from last year, especially if Kreider finds his stride, especially if some of those other younger guys take steps forward. And I think this Ducks team is going to be a team who surprises this upcoming season and actually does some damage. So that's my predictions for the Anaheim Ducks at this current point in time. Second wildcard spot in the Western Conference, finally make it back to the playoffs. So that's my predictions for Anaheim. And lastly, going over to my offseason grade. So I like what they did. I know they had to move off of Gibson. I know they had to move off of Zegras, but those were necessary moves. And if you look at all the other moves they made, adding Kreider, adding Granlund, adding Paling and Mrazek in those other deals, like I really do like it. And they also add some future draft capital they could trade this upcoming trade deadline if they're in a really good position. So I'm going to give them a B rating. I don't think they had a bad offseason. If they had added a couple more pieces, maybe a top 4 veteran defenseman, I could have given them like an A level rating. But I think a B rating is really warranted for the sort of offseason the Anaheim Ducks team had. So that's my opinion on the Anaheim Ducks, on the LA Kings. I'd love your guys' thoughts. What do you think about the Ducks and the Kings? Do you think the Ducks are poised to take a major step forward and make the playoffs? Are the Kings poised to take maybe a little bit of a step back but still finish top 3 in the Pacific? Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? And if you disagree with that, where do you think these two teams land this upcoming season? Definitely your thoughts on all of that and all that we talked about here today down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and for listeners to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming out in the very near future. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll link that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.